Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast presented by Zwift, the indoor training app that makes cycling fun. Saturday, triple header, not a Super Sunday, special Saturday of cycling. Missing Benji. Listen, solo podding, it ain't the glorious life you think it is. It's tough when you back to back, but someone's got to do it, and I'll carry that burden. Valenciana is the main package of the day. Sprint there as well as Etoile de Bessèges, hilltop finish, 4Ks 9%, and Saudi was a sprint as well. But in Valenciana, we had the Evenepoel blow up on the gravel yesterday. Vlasov repaying Bora's faith in him already, signing him to a long-term deal, winning that stage, upturning GC. But today was a sprint, and yesterday really was the last GC day. Perhaps now down in here, Torrevieja, it can be a bit windy. And today was a nothing day, 193 Ks, nailed on sprint. When live coverage started, there was the classic Pro Conti break plus Manuele Boaro, 41 Ks to go, 30-second advantage, always going to be a sprint. The heavy favourite, obviously, Fabio Jakobsen. He's got a good train here. It should be a pretty good train. They have Cherney, Lampard, Amaury, Mercu, Catania. Catania might be injured, and Evenepoel. And Evenepoel said he'd be on train duty. So, yeah, that's not their Tour de France train, but no one else has a Tour de France train really here either, except Intermarché. Intermarché ended up having the strongest train once again. So, despite Jakobsen being clearly the best sprinter here, there were problems for Quickstep. But break was caught with 21 Ks to go. They lined it all up. We'll zoom straight to the sprint. And once again, we saw, Quickstep, they like to come up late, right? If you remember the Tour de France sprints, when they really got it right, it's a late move up at 1600 with Asgreen, then Ballerini, who they're sprinting for in Saudi Tour. He's normally their second last man in the A train, and then Mercu's last man at 350, 400. And Ballerini takes over about 750, 800. But they tried that today. They tried to move up. Evenepoel moves up, and the train doesn't come with him. Lampard doesn't follow. He stays behind Intermarché, and Evenepoel goes to the front. Intermarché have front position. They are sprinting for Christophe. They have Pascal on. And as I said, quite a good train here. It's not, Mapai 2000 or whatever, but it's quite a good train with Piac and Pascal on. And so Evenepoel goes to the front and basically just drills it for 1,300 meters, keeping Intermarché in front position whilst Quickstep aren't on his wheel. So he just basically means that Pascal can delay having to actually ride in the wind and do a better lead out for Christophe later. Now, Christophe can't finish it off later because he looks pretty slow, frankly, and these stages aren't hard enough for him. He likes a harder stage beforehand, I think. It doesn't look in top sprinting shape. But curious from Evenepoel, and critics of him who will say, people criticised him at Worlds for saying he did his domestique duties in bad faith. That was one of the arguments levied against him, which, who's to know what's in his mind? I'm obviously Team Remco, but people said he did his domestique duties where he was making a show of being at the front, riding, etc. early in the race, but did it actually help? And the answer was no, it didn't help following Cosnefroid. We don't need to relitigate that. But this kind of felt even more clearly like that, where he's gone to the front. He wants to show that he's going to pull for Jakobsen, be a good teammate, because people have said he's a bad teammate. And he pulls, and it's like, yeah, but they're not on your wheel. They're deep. Him pulling so hard, Pascal could barely hold his wheel, meant that they couldn't move up. And so that's what happened. We have a left-hand bend pretty late. Mercu finally moves up. Jakobsen surfed wheels into about sixth wheel on that right-hand side outside. Mercu tries to move up. Jakobsen slots onto his wheel, and out of this bend, we only have 9 seconds, 200 meters, maybe a little bit over. And then Mercu's done, and the Pascal and the other trains are actually kicking on the barriers on the left-hand side. Jakobsen slots back in. UAE are trying to bring up whoever. They're Saudi to a sprint. We'll get to that absolute disaster there. But UAE trying to sprint for Milano. Trentin moving up. That closes Jakobsen. Jakobsen, instead of just opening up at 250, 300, which when you're that dominant, probably probably have a good chance of winning. He slots back in behind everyone on the barriers, completely boxed in. Once he was there, absolutely no chance of winning. And it's actually Matteo Moschetti, who was just in good enough position, not outstanding. He was on the Intermarché train. Christophe couldn't really. He was basically on Intermarché. Christophe, if he was in good shape, should be winning this sprint, frankly, from the position they were in. And Moschetti's able to come around him, the Italian, who doesn't, he likes an easier stage and wins the sprint ahead of Peñalva actually on Burgos. Manuel Peñalva came really late on the inside. And so he's 23, Peñalva, so maybe looking for a move up, but a lot of riders got boxed in, and Jakobsen particularly, he didn't really even contest the sprint. So kind of curious for Quickstep that the train, they've had a bad couple of days, I would say, across a few of the races, and they had big Patrick Lefevere in the car today at Valenciana, and he probably wouldn't be too happy with what he saw. But the top 10, Moschetti, Peñalva, Christophe, Viviani, Jakobsen, Anielkowski, Molano 7th, Dupont, Moric, and Luca Mozzato, rounding out the top 10. So tomorrow they get to redo it again. Should be a sprint stage, 92 Ks, wow, and it's inland, probably not too much wind. It's just around Valencia. It's a crit that's got an extra hour added onto it. Well, no, they don't really do it through the city too much. So Quickstep be wanting to get it right tomorrow, and the question is, will they be as consistent winning at other races? These are usually the races they're cleaning up. And yeah, Jakobsen won earlier, but Saudi wasn't great either with the train. It's not just the A train that is good with Ballerini, Asger, and Merku. So anyway, maybe Lampard has lost a little bit of 1 minute power and isn't great in that role anymore. I think Yannick Steimler we're seeing is maybe could move up, and he's quite good in that role, a bit punchier. I don't know. Obviously, Lampard is superior all-around classics rider, but just in terms of train duties, I'm not sure. But no need to overreact. In terms of GC, it should be locked at Valenciana, and Vlasov should be taking this out, and that'll be a nice win and a nice start for Bora Hansgrohe. Evenepoel is actually still sitting in second position, despite cracking on the stage yesterday. He's ahead of Carlos Rodriguez by 4 seconds, who's ahead of Enric Mas by 14 seconds. So to be honest, Carlos Rodriguez, the youngsters are looking all right at Ineos. They didn't sign Almeida. They saved they kept their money. They've got Rodriguez. They had already had Plapp lined up. They've got Sheffield signed from Rally. And I think I said this before, but I think Ineos were like, we're good. We don't need a splash for Almeida. We will trust that Rodriguez will develop, that Sheffield is good. Plapp, Pidcock, Hayter, and I know this is .pro race. It's the start of February, but you got to let me overreact. Like, I'm watching a triple header of February race on a Saturday here. But Rodriguez does look good, and so does Sheffield over in Bessèges. But before we go over to Bessèges, which was probably the best race of today, I want to mention our show partner, Zwift. Busy lives or triple stacked races starting at 11 a.m. and finishing at 5:30 p.m. make it difficult to find time for the bike. So if you spend a lot of time watching cycling like me, not enough time actually riding, with Zwift, you can hop straight on. The minute this recording finishes, I'm hopping straight on Zwift whilst this goes to the editing factory. And the event calendar with Zwift is constantly busy with rides. If you go on the Zwift companion app or Zwift app, you can see there are rides all the time, almost at 15-minute intervals, 24/7 that you can hop into, like the LRCP ride next week. There's also workouts on demand, or my preference at the moment, as I'm just trying to log Ks, is just to cruise around, free ride, and explore the various worlds, both real and fantasy, at your leisure. So I hope to see you next Tuesday at the LRCP inaugural group ride. Benji is excited. He'll be back by then. Don't worry. And I can't wait for Benji to come back. But yeah, next Tuesday, first LRCP Zwift group ride. It's in the description down below, the link if you want to check it out. Etoile de Bessèges, stage 4. The hilltop. I mean, what is a hill and what is a mountain? I don't know. This is a hardish climb. Le Mont Bouquet, 4.6 Ks, 9.1%. I feel like we're really getting on the threshold of what a hill is there. The big favourites for this stage were Champoussin, maybe, who won the Volta Stage 20 ahead of Roglic with the screaming Champoussin face. Johannesson, the young, well, no, it's actually not that young. He won to 11 year, like 35 years old. Tobias Harland Johannesson on X, who's already won quite a few pro races in his career, but this is his technical neo-pro career. Jay Vine, maybe Ulysses, quite good, but he's not looked as good. And Thibaut Pinot's here as well. But yeah, I didn't think Thibaut Pinot would do pretty well. In terms of GC, though, what was interesting would be how well would Benjamin Thomas climb. He's the time trialist. He won the stage yesterday. He's a punchy guy. He's like Geraint Thomas before Geraint Thomas became Geraint Thomas, and he's actually Benjamin Thomas. So that makes actually a lot of sense now that I think about it. He's French Geraint Thomas who's remained Benjamin Thomas, and would this be too much for him, this climb? They'd obviously be trying to defend his position on GC, which was 7 seconds ahead of Bettiol and 15 seconds ahead of Berger on Total Energy. And by the way, Total Energy, they've switched over to red bikes. I don't know if anyone has any data on, obviously I have a red bike because I like to go fast, but do teams go faster when they change their bikes over to red bikes? I think they do, but it's just science, I guess. Anyway, he's in third, but Johannesson would really be trying to move up and put pressure on Thomas and Bettiol. He's a better climber than those two. Again, pretty strong break with not Galopin. He got dropped out of the break. He's a new signing for Trek, Goujon, Zimmerman, and Joel Suter. Now, Joel Suter, young Swiss rider, he's looked good early season. He had a nice result in the Mallorcan Challenge races. Over a couple of them, they had a minute with 35 k's to go, but the trains were set up. By the way, Carapaz, I should have mentioned, remiss of me not to mention, he did start this stage despite the crash yesterday. He seemed to be all okay, and there's also been reports that he will be starting. I think Tossato said to the Italian press he will be starting the Giro d'Italia despite Bernal's crash. So good, I agree with that decision. But that's separate to this. 1 minute lead, 35 k's remaining, train set up, Galopin dropped, Goujon looking in trouble, and Suter looked as strong as Zimmerman was like struggling to hold Suter's wheel. They got caught with about 5 k's to go, got paced perfectly. And I want to give a big hat tip to Remy Rochas and Cofidis for how they approached this climb. They hit it almost first wheel, so narrow entry to this climb, just behind Magnus Sheffield, who looks absolutely cracked already. If we want to overreact to 2.1 races, well, this is the podcast where you can do that. Sheffield looks legit for Ineos. They must be very, very happy with him. And I'll tell you some other, he will be getting paid less than Rowan Dennis, and they're going to be hoping he can try and fulfill that role and develop into maybe winning other races as well. He paced at the base, then Rochas took over and set a steady, but by no means blistering to the eye pace for Benjamin Thomas. It was actually Sky Tactics. Got the TT guy, who's not the best climber, ride defensive tempo on the front to discourage attacks. He did such a good job for Remy Rochas. We saw Johannesson and Jay Vine, friend of the podcast, fourth wheel, battling for fourth wheel. Bettiol, fifth wheel, looking okay, but not sprightly. He wasn't moving up when he got a chance. And Rochas just kept pulling and pulling and pulling. And if you don't know Johannesson, he's got a kick on him, this Norwegian, and compared to like a Jay Vine or Tiberi, the Trek rider, looked very good as well. It wasn't Mollema, it was Antonio Tiberi, the young Italian. Johannesson's got the fastest punch out of all those guys. And eventually, on the steeper section with about 2 k's to go, Vine attacked. He doesn't have the same kick as Johannesson. He probably would have preferred the climb to be twice as long and pace twice as hard. He attacked. Johannesson joined him. Vine paced for a bit and then was like, hold on. Johannesson's back on GC on Bettiol and Thomas. We have the time trial tomorrow. He should be pacing or contributing to the pace, or at least if I'm going to be pacing, he better give me the stage win. Johannesson looked either in a bit of difficulty or he was finessing Jay Vine, and he definitely finessed Bettiol or tried to in the stage yesterday when they were in that 3-man move with Benjamin Thomas, and that didn't work out for him. So I'm not going to say that Johannesson's an enemy of the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast, but Don't like the way he was finessing Jay Vine there, putting my biased hat on. I know Benji is team X, so there's a bit of yin and yang there. Anyway, Johannesson did pull a little bit, then Vine took over, but very stop-start. Barry came back. Champoussin, we saw, I already mentioned him now twice. He was doing the stage 20 face, screaming. He came back to that group with about 700 meters to go. Bettiol was struggling. He actually dropped a lot. Probably not climbing in the same shape he was at Tokyo on the last climb of Mikuni. And eventually, Johannesson attacked once Champoussin had just caught them. Vine got pinched. He had allowed Champoussin and Barry to close in front of him. And the worst thing that can happen in the last 300 meters of something like this, when everyone's on the limit, is when you're drafting a rider who's trying to close the other rider and then they're just like, oh, I can't do it. And you have to go around them, especially the long way because you have a right-hand turn. Vine gets to Johannesson's wheel just before this right-hand turn. Johannesson kicks too early, pedal strikes through this right-hand turn, just holds it up, and they both punch 5 pedal strokes and no one's able to move up position, with Johannesson taking the stage, and a pretty good win from him as well. I don't know if he would have preferred the climb to be harder or more consistent, but yeah, a nice win for him ahead of Jay Vine, Tiberi, Champoussin, Latour, Ulysses Mollema, Alessandro Ver. We wondered who were RK running for, Gielnak or Ver. It was Ver, young Italian, like 20 years old, right, come back 9th. Groupama FDJ's first top 10 in the first 4 stages of this race. Bettiol 10th. In terms of the general classification, Benjamin Thomas actually maintains his first position. He didn't lose that much. He came 11th, only 23 seconds down, so magnificent job by Cofidis. He has a 7-second gap ahead of Alberto Bettiol, with Johannesson moving up to 3rd on 8 seconds. Looking at the other riders below them, Latour and co., they're not great time trialists. Tomorrow we have an 11-kilometer time trial, the last stage on the Sunday. It will be one to watch. Thomas, I think, his first TT on his new Cofidis equipment. Bettiol, obviously, on a quick education first setup. Johannesson, X, they use Watchop, the Dan Bigham company. They use their equipment. They're all those 3 within 8 seconds of each other, with the first position up for grabs. Benjamin Thomas is a really good time trialist, but you never know on new equipment. So I can't wait to see that TT tomorrow. I would expect the positions to remain unchanged, 1, 2, 3. But otherwise, maybe Connor Swift can move up if Pierre Latour has a shocker as well. He can move into the top 5, which would be a very, very nice result for Arkea, and that's how they accumulate a lot of points. But for Jay Vine, disappointment. I think he's got a few other stage races coming up, and I guess he just needs. The problem with Alpecin is they don't have riders like a Sheffield or like Gegenhardt or someone to pace a climb for him, and he has to rely on what the other teams are doing. And Cofidis today did not want this to be a nuclear pace, and I think he wanted it to be a longer sort of 10-minute effort. But Bessèges has been a good little race and a good stage today. Saudi, interesting for the first little bit. It was a flat stage, sprint stage, but there was no wind. So it wasn't the wind that really disrupted the stages previously. Again, finishing in Alula Old Town, UNV Groenewegen, but X, who just won that stage in Bessèges, they tried to move Anton Scharmig up on GC. They had Yuri Anstad in the break with him, with Steimler and Polychronis Tsotsakis, which is kind of nominative. Is that nominative determinism? Polychronis? I don't know the Greek translation. But X were pacing. They had a minute gap. They were trying to move Scharmig up, but the wind just wasn't favourable. And Bora, Lotto, they had too many numbers pacing them back. Quickstep, though, obviously they were like, well, Ballerini's not going to beat Ewan or Groenewegen, so let's put Steimler in the break, make them chase even harder. And Steimler was really good. He actually dropped the X guys, but eventually got caught as well. Sprint train set up. Ewan has a back wheel puncture at 3Ks to go, which ruins the entire stage pretty much, because I wanted to see the UNV Groenewegen, even though Ewan's missing Zelig at Lotto. Bike exchange to another good lead out, and Groenewegen destroyed everyone pretty easily. And Gaviria, the UAE lead outs, I don't know what's going on there, but the UAE lead out was an absolute mess. And he wasn't trusting them, and then moved out and then moved back in. It was very, very odd. But Dan McClay, he always just consistently, Dan McClay sprints to the line, and that's why he could take a lot of points as well this year for Arkea. He sprints to the line, and if you do that, when people give up on the win when they can't win, like when Groeneweggen's 3 bike lengths clear, he can move up from 5th to 3rd and take more points. He came 2nd here, and obviously there's barely any points available at the Saudi Tour. Top 10, Groenewegen, McClay, Ballerini, Gaviria, Van Poppel, Bonifacio, De Boist, who sprinted instead of Ewan, Lacroix, Blikra, and Dainese. So I think Dainese and DSM will be a little bit disappointed with his sprint level, I think. Looking at 13th on stage 1, 5th, even 5th, to be honest, in this field is not an improvement. 5th on stage 3 and 10th today is for a rider who came 2nd in a stage in the Vuelta and 3rd twice at the end of 2021, as well as 3rd in Giro del Veneto. Anyway, DSM, maybe they should go for Wells in the future. But that's just, again, my Australian biased hat sitting on my head. In terms of GC, Maxim van Gils took it out. Really good points for Lotto, 125 points. So remember, at these 2-1 stage races, no points for stages, but decent points for GC. They wouldn't have been expecting that. Buitrago takes 2nd, Cost in the crosswinds before that climb on, I think, stage 4 yesterday, that mental steep climb. But yeah, Saudi Tour, I think, it's actually pretty exciting racing. It's been a good week. Next week, there's actually not that much racing on. I really would have preferred if there was one of these stage races next week to pad it out a bit, but that's just the way it drew up. Benji will be back next week, though. We have our Bahrain preview on Monday. We moved the Koos interview to Tuesday because I don't want to. The schedule was getting crazy. We didn't want to upload 3 podcasts in one day. We're already uploading a lot of content, Jumbo preview, Bahrain preview. I wanted the Koos interview to sit on its own day, and that's why. And it's not really tied to any particular event. So that'll be next Tuesday. But for updates like that, make sure to follow that Lanterne Rouge CP on Twitter, where we keep you updated with those sort of things. But yeah, should be a sprint in Valenciana tomorrow. More interesting TT, I think, at Bessèges. Tune in for that. We'll have recaps of both on the podcast then. Thanks for listening. Thanks for Zwift for supporting the podcast as our presenting partner. And we'll see you tomorrow. Ciao.